let's start at the top. The most obvious, easy one is most valuable player. Now, I will say, I think it's on awards like these. It's up to you also. You define how the awards decided. Like I typically do who I think actually is the best, as in who is playing the best. It's not about you have to be on the best team or whatever. So it's up to you how you want to do it. You can pick the best player from the best team. Who is the most valuable player of the LEC? We're just counting the whole thing, playoffs and regular split here, yeah?
Okay.
So who are you picking?
All right. So for my MVP, I am going to choose Vladi. I think the context of facing up against the mid laners that he did play against in Humanoid and Caps and so forth, I think is super relevant. I think the poise he plays with and how important the mid lane role is in terms of how the game flows is super he did incredibly. I think he lanes well, side lanes well, team fights incredibly well. He's just such a complete player. I have very little complaints about how he plays. I think that he played borderline perfect borderline at the level that is expected in the LEC. I think the other candidate in my mind is when I look at KC would be Kana, but I do have to pinpoint that one series they played where he played more of the tanks, and it seemed like he was kind of off in certain cases when it came to certain champions. I think that he's very damn good at his role, but I think Vladi just has a wider spread of what his role can be. I think that's what's so impressive to me.
Ooh, see, I feel like you can go anywhere, because I'm tempted to give it to Kalist, mate. Because if I think about this playoffs, bro, he played 12 games in a row against Hansama and Upset and looked pretty good in most of these games, mate. He had a couple that were early on, not so good against G2, but I thought G2 did the cynical thing where they target this motherfucker in draft, make his life hell. When they just played normal in the final, it's kind of fucking awesome. He's got to the point already where his baseline level is so good, you just ask, will he pop off? You don't go, will he collapse and just fucking die? And can you, in fact, now I don't even feel like you would try and target him as a player, mate. He just looks too good. That's actually a massive compliment when people don't go, will this rookie show? No one was even saying that. If anything, the joke I just said is, if anything, Skewmond, who was the rookie who kind of got the fucking bullying, if anything. We're all looking are you ready? Are you ready to win yet? Was actually Kalist, mate. Again, if you took the nameplate off, you'd never know this was a rookie. It's actually outrageous. And the amount of really good games he had as well were fucking sick. Again, I feel like even the base level of a carry game for this guy's higher than most players who play his position, not even rookies. So, no, I think, by the way, I actually think it says a lot about Karmine Corp that you can go many different ways on who the best player in their team even was. It really wasn't one person just smurfing. In fact, I'd go the other way and say I don't think anyone played badly in this team. It was actually outrageous. Normally you can get someone who has an all right split, or did they get carried or whatever. Everyone looked pretty good. I mean, even the Targamas one. The most interesting thing about that was there was that illusion a few weeks back where they said something there was an interview from in his team where they said something, Yamato, that now he talks so much that if people heard the voice comms, they would think he was the MVP of the team, which is holy shit, that is insane if true. If that's actually, if now he's comfortable and he can actually sort of come as he's playing, no wonder they're fucking 1.5 times better than everyone thought on paper. I also think, by the way, it's just kind of cool because I don't know anyone who had Karmine Corp as the #1 team this year. Remember, it went like this. G2 if you want the old one, Fnatic if you just look at the roster, maybe Koi because you think Giorgio upgrade or whatever. After that's when people got to KC. Then it was more oh, well, we'll see how it goes with Kalist and what's going to happen with Vladi. And, should they have kept the players at the top player? All that shit. Did you make the right choice? All that crap. So, no, I think that's a fun one. What about then? By the way, Yamato was the one who put this one in, not me. You're going to think I put this in. I would just celebrate greatness, Yamato, but you've put in least valuable player. Holy shit, okay. #1 hater award. All right, who you hating on then? Least valuable player. Who's the least valuable player, bro? Who you hating on?
I have to contextualize it to the idea of what was expected, right?
Okay.
And I gotta pinpoint your boy Relevant, considering he came into BDS. Okay. And I thought BDS made an upgrade. I thought they made an upgrade. But somehow in this winter split, Irrelevant stuck true to his name. The memes, they write themselves he was irrelevant. There was no games that really stood out. I think his Garen performance was almost poetic in the sense that, it was almost as if this split was designed for Adam to feel good about himself. Okay. After the short rogue stint, he went on Twitter, and he basically said, it's did you replace me to have this Garen performance? He wrote in French. It's just that thing is like what I expected from BDS. I thought that 113 was a big question mark to me. I was like, okay, maybe Striker knows something, worked with him in the past. You know, maybe it's a good fit. You know, maybe there's something there. He brings an aggression that BDS usually lack, which I like. Okay, I can see that. But Irrelevant for over Adam, I'm a big like Irrelevant is overrated type of guy. But that was more due to like the community sentiment, because I thought Irrelevant was always really good, really good. I just didn't buy into like G2 should get Irrelevant, bench BB. I'm like, what the fuck are we saying? You know, those are the narratives I always fought against. So in the context of what I expected from Irrelevant, he's for me LVP. Obviously, there was players that performed even worse than him, like in SK or whatever. But I didn't expect much from SK or Team Heretics, or you know. So there's that.
No, where do you land? Because this allows me also to just pick someone who is a good player and just hate on them. So I agree with this category. So I'm going to pick Jojo Pion. Because, bro, he was supposed to come as the promised one from NA. Shows, by the way, what I still do believe is true. Like, I do believe back in the day, if you'd had Doublelift or Dar.com, they would have been good. They would have had success. Now, look, he showed flashes of that. Early on, you got a game or two like that. But, bro, by the end, if I had to name one of the most underwhelming partnerships, it was Elyoya and Jojo. It was the fact that, like, towards the end, by the way, they were even giving him all of his picks. He was even getting the Yone and all that shit. It just didn't really matter that much. Like, it was kind of a bummer to me. Like, the way they went out against Fnatic, I thought was just pathetic. Like, that wasn't even particularly spirited, you know. That wasn't some crazy back and forth. That was kind of just like, these guys looked all right in the regular split, and then they were just fucking what you call fool's gold in the playoffs, mate. They never showed up. I mean, remember that story? They themselves even would have lost one of those BDS games that just got gifted out of nowhere, that crazy, like, nuke throw, whatever the fuck it was. So, no, I actually thought how underwhelming, because when I looked at this team, this was the team where, on paper, that should be an immediate upgrade. And in fact, you should probably immediately be going for the championship. Like, if there's any team that should like hit the ground running, this is it. Like, you've only changed one player, but by the end, it's just kind of meh, isn't it? Like, it's a bit whatever, this move for me.
Agreed. Jojo Pion was rough, man. Like he like week one was solid, but then after that, it's like even the regular split games were really bad. A lot of unforced errors. It's as if like in the end, as you mentioned, it's like he turned into comfort, but he just turned into like almost like a Leicester Frescawi in a sense, because at least Frescawi knew there's a benefit to knowing how bad you are, because then you will adjust what you do in the game towards that. And there was this sentiment among mid laners playing against Frescawi that they thought it was so frustrating because they knew he was bad. But I think also he knew he was bad, so he skewed he made sure that he was there in any activity that happened. He didn't pursue for more and let everyone on his team drive the game. Jojo Pion is supposed to be more. He tried to be more, and in that spirit, just inted. Like he inted. So I'm with you. Jojo Pion is a very big one. it's a good one. I like that one.
Right. What about? Obviously, this can be in any context. Biggest disappointment. Who's the biggest disappointment for you?
Biggest disappointment. We've already mentioned two very big disappointments.
I'll tell you what, I'll make one specific for you. My specific one, this is very carefully phrased, is Fnatic in the playoffs with a lead. Ooh. Bro, if these guys could just close a lead, it's crazy because when you have players as skilled as theirs, normally you say, don't let them get ahead of the game, don't let them accelerate the game because they're good. But these guys, they're like, there's something about Razork, bro. I don't know if he's got trust issues from past teams. He's just way too hardy to close the game. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's like he can never just let the game come to him and sort of like have poise. He does that thing where it's like he's so eager to like get the. But it's weird. This happens in combat sports. So sometimes people rush in for the knockout and they themselves get knocked out as a result. Whereas like you're winning the fight, mate. You're controlling it. You're in your pomp. No one can fuck with you. Like, so that's why it's specifically them with a lead, mate. Because if you convert all the games, they have leads. They're in the finals, if not the champions this split. Like, remember, people will forget. They also, not only did they do well against Karmikop, in the upper bracket, they had the leads against G2 before they lost. Like, something went wrong with this team. What are you thinking?
No, the Razork is like fucking that Cody Garbrandt, you know? Like, oh, he gets like a good punch in, and then he just wanted to go for the kill and just had no discipline the longest time. He definitely has this biggest disappointment. Like, I think leading up to the finals, in terms of like what, just what G2, the aura they built around the whole drafting conversation. Like, I just expected more, you know. I just expected more in terms of the prep work. The traps they fell for are like traps that are common. And
But wasn't
maybe
that
it's
the craziest thing as well in the finals? You were just sat there like, where's all the like secret tech? Like, what is it? This is just normal. Like, what the fuck? These are the real drafts. Oh, well, fuck then. What? Like, I thought some like next level shit was going to come out in game 3 or something. But it didn't really. Just overwon it.
It is a dance. It is a dance. Like the sniper bans were
Sure.
good with the Lulu, Silver Lulu denied and so forth. But like I just expected more. And that game 3 was so damn desperate that like it's etched into my mind. And now I'm thinking back to all the like painful G2 moments, like sticking to Nocturne Oriana for fucking 5 games straight at the World Championship and all that. That was really, really a painful moment because Casey, fair play, insane draft prep. But I just hoped that this G2 onion had more layers that weren't so rotten, you know?
Right. What about then? Biggest surprise? What's the biggest surprise?
You want to start with this one?
Yeah, I mean, you've already done one, so I'll echo it. I actually think it has to be Canna, mate. Like, I've watched this guy's whole career. I'm actually a fan of like carry top laners from Korea. But the difference is, I always said to me, his problem was exactly, if you think of the teams he was on, they were like tiny bit too good for him. He was one of those guys who's like above average. Like if you, by the way, this guy probably should have played most of his career on a Freak of Freaks or a Sandbox type team. That sort of team is like his level, DRX. Like that's the sort where you could be like a good player on that team. You could contribute and maybe you could like go to Worlds as like the 4th seed or 3rd seed or something. Or you could make like a semi-final run. My problem was he just was never like the super elite players, which remember from that country are the best top players of all time. Khan, Smeb, fucking these are the gods, mate. Like these guys are unbelievable. So I always thought he just got hard done by because he would often replace those people on teams. Already you're in a hard spot. And then 2, he was always joining teams where he's supposed to win worlds, bro. Like you have like the highest possible expectations. So I did think when he came to Europe, people were way too harsh initially. Like they were making it sound like when you get like a really old skill, like when fucking Cacao comes like 5 years too late, like, oh, no, he was never going to be that bad. But the idea he would be like the best in the region, which I think, by the way, years after this fucking finals, like he actually did outperform Broken Blade. And actually, Broken Blade was getting mad props for this split. So the idea that guy's hit the best Western top lane is pretty kind of crazy. I could never have expected that personally.
Yeah,
Gotta be
for
up
sure.
there.
No, that's definitely a good one. Like, beyond like the Casey storylines of like them winning, obviously that's probably like the biggest surprise in the fashion that they did. Like certain players outside of Casey that stood out in terms of their performance. Like I think 113 was fantastic. Like I thought
some
he
good
would be
games
like a
for
big
sure,
player. He
yeah.
had some good games. I think he made BDS very, very active. And the other angle is like like I always made the comparison that Hansama is very similar to Gumayushi in the sense that he's an AD that drives his support to carry the game through his champion choice. And the fact that he was capable of making such a switch up in the middle of the split, where basically Gumayushi turned into Smash, but only with one player. He did the switch up, the Ezreal commitment, the Sivirs, and that was like super, super cool. I think that was super, super impressive that he became the most consistent force of this team, besides maybe Broken Blade, where they really needed to restructure their drafting and find more carry potential through AD, and that he could catch that after certain periods where he was pinpoint as a player that only wanted to play the aggressive ADs. I think was also super, super impressive. But I think the biggest surprise awards should all go to anything Casey related for sure.
Bro. Right, what about then best drafting? Who was the best at drafting?
This one's so tough because that best of 5 between KC and G2 was probably some of the best fearless drafting I've seen globally. Like on par with like Tabe and Home, you know, it's like on par with those guys. But I really, really like the evolution from KC2 to find the ways to break down G2, like making sure they don't get the Civil Lulu, ban the Warwick to force the Ambassador ban, and then to line up their first pick through that by making sure that the enemy has to remove these champions. I think was super, super neat. But I have to give it to like the peak, because in the end, I think it's very impressive that G2 managed to band-aid so much through their drafting, because in the end, KC was so complete as a team. They managed to hide a lot of weaknesses. They managed to hide Skumon's weaknesses, and they did so through drafting. It's like G2 had the equivalent of like the Anyone's Legends run in a sense, because at the end of the day, I think in hindsight, we can easily say that KC's individual players were just better.
No, I would also agree. I think you actually have to give it to Del Valco this time around because, for one, I think by the end he didn't have the best team. And then two, I also agree. By the end, it slips out when you played all these BO5s. But I actually thought they made it look like it wasn't just drafting, like they were just the best team again with all the best players. But you can see that wasn't the case. So, no, I thought they smurfed. I even thought they had those ones where, like, if you're Fnatic, you think you won some of those drafts or whatever, but, like, you didn't. You didn't know specifically what they wanted in their comp. So, no, I'll give you that one. I think that was a banger. Right, what about worst drafting?
Brother, the first thing that comes to mind is that fucking MF Lulu moment, with the with the volley
They
barracks.
definitely had some criminal ones. Considering they almost made the finals, they had some criminal drafts, didn't they? They had some bad ones, mate.
They like I think GX is definitely like a part of that. Like they fall on the wayside, but there was like in week 2 they started picking like Nidalee. They had that Galio fucking Mel draft, which was awful as well. It's like GX is so damn boring, so like they fall on the wayside, but they had some terrible fucking drafting. Like they had no clue about their own identity, and after starting what I believe was 3-0, they couldn't build on any momentum at all. Like I thought at least this team would fall off in a way where other teams would just outpace them in terms of their improvement, because I didn't think the ceiling of this team was that high. But I thought that at least they would reach that ceiling and hold on to it. But they just found a new floor through their prep work. So GX definitely also one a team that deserves some pain here. But the Fnatic game 5 and even the start of the season, that was a funny one, right? Where they gave up Scanner to Koi. Like they could have had a 9-0 regular split, maybe, if it wasn't for this fucking Scanner give up. So Fnatic definitely has some oof moments that are very memorable.
By the way, assuming we don't get an LCK where they're like, good news, the whole splits are all fearless from now on. Assuming we actually are now ending fearless and we're going to do first stand, then go to a normal meta. I actually do think in a weird way, Yamato, this opening split was a good hyper for the normal meta, because the difference is, if you imagine not having fearless, bro, teams like Fnatic just get so much better instantly. By the way, I'm even thinking of people like, if you are the Labrov and Hansama and you did this to have the 2v2, as soon as they get rid of the lane swaps, you are going to fucking love the lane, mate. That's 2v2 going to be monstrous. We're going to have some insane 2v2 lanes for a start. So in some ways, it's actually a perfect hyper, because next split could be even better if there's no fearless, mate. Could be crazy.
Yeah. No, it's hype. I wonder if Riot will cave, because as we had the episode with Monty where we talked about fearless and like what we would lose, in the long term if there was a big commitment to fearless, and it's very obvious. Like globally, the precision of League is at an all-time low. Oh, and sure. I made a tweet and people were very, very angry, and they like misconstrue things always on Twitter, you know how it is. And it's like I think for the average fan, they just don't give a damn about the lack of precision.
No.
Like the mistakes are very relatable to them.
They still talk like everyone's just hinting and fucking up. I'm like, bro, no one's ever played this comp before.
Yeah.
And into that comp, no one's ever played it. Like, this is crazy. It's why if every single BO5, if you notice, has at least one game everyone thinks is illegal. But that's also because it almost has to be at this point. No one can really master all these comps, bro. It's just impossible. You can't.
As there's too many mutations of what paths you can go down. And the funny one to me is always like, why is this champion open in game 4? Because it was banned every game. Come on. I do think that maybe this year, due to competitive integrity, I don't know if like teams are gonna come together and agree. That's usually like one lever that they can pull to move away from, like move into fearless. But considering that they've said that the calendar year is going to be a certain way, I would be very surprised if they make like that change. Like I think a lot of people would get like angry on the competitive side. But if we go into next year and fearless is going to be something that is there always, I could imagine that to be like a net positive for the numbers, but definitely a negative for precision, because it's like we saw mistakes from Chovy we never saw. Like we saw mistakes from like the most disciplined teams that we would never see. Like some of the like teams like Bilibili, How Alive, like all the teams, the usual suspects are not at this international event. It's like everything is in the air, and there was definitely like a lot of question marks in terms of gameplay. But I do think from fearless in terms of what you can do, I do think that there is a learning curve to it. I think that now it gets exciting in a way for fearless, where I do think there is a deeper evolution to it, and there's a lot of tricks that you can pull and a lot of things that can be done. There's certain elements, like, for example, Team Liquid, they opened all the OPs just to get them out of the way, traded, get them out of the pool right away, be stronger on red side. And this was an angle that they did. We saw many triumphant victories through prep, whether it's Tabe or G2 or Casey or anybody else, or like the Olaf Game 5s for Zeus. I do think that aspect of it is cool, and I think there is more to be done from that side in terms of strategy. So for someone that loves competition and precision, I do think there is a lot more to be had there in that department.
I'm going to pick for mine. I will take Fnatic as worst drafting, because the joke is like, even though sometimes the drafting was fine, it just also looked to me like, I will just speculate that I think some of the players had input in some of those. There's no way that the coaches were not picking those, like fucking, that wasn't a blackboard with a flow chart that led to those comps. Those are the ones where it's even worse on a game 4, game 5, where like individually players are picking shit where it's like, that doesn't even work together, but whatever. You say you want it, there you go, fucking lock it in. We're all going down with the ship together, I guess. Right. Best off-season versus expectations. So based on coming into the split with the expectations, who actually in the end had the best off-season? Who killed it?
Casey is just the easy one, right?
Pretty good.
Day one.
Sure.
So how about we look beyond that? Where do we go beyond that?
I mean, put it this way, you can still give G2 a lot of credit. They were still in position to potentially win. By the way, I actually do get the vibe as well. If you look how G2 looked like they had no answers in the final and their draft seemed to collapse, I almost do get the sense, because how scrims were won, they thought they might be playing Fnatic, not Karmine Corp, and they were sort of like fucking getting ready to try and beat this team that's been beating them in scrims. And they didn't look like they came prepared for Karmine Corp to me. So I still think, bear in mind you have rookie Skewmon. He's never played in the LEC before. He's still in the finals, could potentially have won. Labron wasn't great, but like... this is why narratives can't be what you call narrative whiplash. You can't just have it, Yamato, where 1 week G2's unbeatable. You're a fool if you ever thought anything otherwise. And then the next week, like now, they suddenly look super mortal. Like they couldn't even win one game. I'm with you as well, by the way. It's like they didn't just get 3-0'd. That third game, they weren't even in it. It wasn't even like that shit. At least when Fnatic was playing against Karmine Corp, it was like, if we fight back, we can get it. No, they were like so far behind. It was actually depressing. Like you were actually just getting pissed all over by Karmine Corp. It was a fucking joke. So, no, I mean, there's not that many other teams. The problem is a lot of people sort of fucked up this offseason, I feel like.
Yeah, like in my mind, I did expect BDS to land somewhat higher because of like the point before with the relevant. That was one. I think Koi getting fourth is like reasonable. Casey, I think in terms of where I expected them, like I figured this was like a very, very stacked roster in terms of just individual talent, but I thought they would struggle to be on the same page.
Yeah,
and they were literally like the most disciplined team in the league, which is crazy to even say.
True.
Like that first game against Koi is something that stands out, or even the series against G2. Like they were so insanely disciplined when there were so many question marks. Like Yike moved from G2, where everything is already said for him. Targamas, a player that speaks less, and then we have, of course, like an import in the top lane position that barely speaks English, so many question marks, but then there you go, boom, just the most disciplined team in the league and winning the league. It's hard to look away from KC in terms of like the expectations. Other than that, I do think that everything else kind of landed somewhat where expected. I think Team Heretics did better than I thought. They figured out, some bits and pieces about how to, draft scaling. And, I think the Rogue, I expected a little bit more for them due to the tenure of those players, but they were just straight ass. So there's that.
Is that the end of the LEC segment?
Is there any award you have in mind? Do you want to flame somebody?
No, I think in general, here's the thing. I feel like actually one of the things that does annoy me about this split is, to me, because G2 people thought we're going to win this split, I think people were ready to flame LEC again and be like, the level's not that great. Whereas I think it's just fearless, mate. I think next split, if there's no fearless, I think the top 3 or 4 teams will look really good. Like I'll even take people like the Kois of the world. They'll be right back in the mix. That'll be quite interesting. Maybe, by the way, a team like GX even looks like they would benefit from just a standard meta. Like there's a lot of teams I think get better if we go back to normal. So no, I think LEC is in a pretty good place, mate. I'm not hating.
I'm with you. Yeah, same. I think it's just, The comparison is always internationally, but I don't give a fuck about that when I think about the LEC. Like, if I compete in the LEC, I'm going to allow myself to have ego and be delusional. But looking at it from outside, it's more about the product itself and the competitive parity, and if the right names are given playtime. And Casey winning the split with 5 players. Obviously, Ike won the previous year, so he's the outlier there in that team. But these are not the usual winners. So that's super, super cool. You still have like a G2 and a Fnatic with these rosters, and Casey won a split. That's super, super exciting. I agree that the parity between teams is much better than the previous year. And I think as an additional like point, it's like next split is going to be best of 3 single round robin, which is super exciting. I think from a competitive standpoint, and them doing like the things in the arenas too, is for the progression of the teams, that is insanely healthy. Because BO1s, Super Weeks, like Super Weeks BO1s into Fearless is ridiculous. Like it's better than what NA offered, for sure. But doing BO1s and prepping for BO1s and then switching like this into Fearless is very, very inconvenient, I think. So there was bound to be some like growing pains as the teams switched over to Fearless, because that is such a whiplash like from playing BO1. So I agree with you that things can only get better for the LEC for sure.
And normally what I track is in the history of LEC, because the region has produced so many good mid laners, the list of people who've won is amazing. Like, if you don't know, the worst names on the all-time list are like Niski, Febervan, Larson. Like, it's a pretty cracked out list. So if you tell me Vladdy gets added to that list, mate, the way he played, he deserves to. Like, this actually was some like Expecke level motherfucker who just rocked up and had a bunch of sick ass playoff games. Think about the champion pool he was playing. Like, he wasn't just like, it's the Oriana Azema. Like, bro, he was playing like Victor, Hui, fucking Aurora. By the way, Aurora's one where, like, I see a lot of like veterans still fuck up that champion. It's like really nuanced. You go down, he had the fucking Corky, Jace. He was willing to play everything. This guy also, by the way, if you watch him play solo queue, he plays all this shit. But there's a lot of people do that in solo queue to like vent, and then they go in the game and just pick the same 3 champions. This guy was definitely willing to accommodate the draft. So no, it's baller when a player like that wins. And obviously, Kalist has an incredibly exciting storyline for the idea he's won in his first ever split. So, right. Let's move on from LEC then. See more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, you know, be a pleb and don't.